Welcome back, everybody, to this session, setting us up for the very important topic on how we're going to engage urban citizens and especially young people in this incredible, important fight to tackle climate change. To introduce and lead us through the next session, please let me welcome to the stage Chief Executive Officer of Realdania and one of C40's strategic founder, Mr. Jesper Nygård. Bienvenido.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us for this final session of this great summit. A key theme for what we have been discussing for the last couple of days is how will we be able to scale up the action, to do it fast and to do it so we can make the world more sustainable. One of the best ways to do that is a theme that hasn't been discussed yet and which we are going to use 1 hour to discuss now. It's about citizen engagement. And when you look in the C40 Unlocking Action Report, it is one of the top barriers that has been identified. So we're going to use 1 hour now to discuss that. But before I introduce our keynote speaker for this session, I have a very special, new and very innovative friend who I would like to invite to come on the stage. Hopefully. Yeah, here it comes. This is the modern times answer for R2-D2. This is a robot who is able to transmit through Twitter all what we are doing now. So this robot, hi robot, it's going to be our friend for the next couple of minutes. It's going to be live streaming our keynote speaks, so we can use it. So, and it doesn't have a real name yet. So if you use Twitter now, you could use the hashtag Cities for Climate and a hashtag Give Me a Name. Then maybe they will use that name if you have some good ideas. But then on to the topic, on to our keynote speaker. We're going to hear from somebody who has been on the front line of the global youth-led environmental campaigning for more than 10 years, and he's only 16 years old. He addressed the UN General Assembly when he was 14 years old, a couple of years ago, and now he's a youth director for Earth Guardians, an organization of young activists around the world. He's currently plaintiff in a lawsuit against President Obama for the failure to protect the atmosphere and the future of our world. So please join me in welcoming on stage the most difficult name in this session to pronounce, Xiuhtezcatl Martinez. Please welcome on the stage. The stage is yours.
Me okay? ¿No? Bueno. Órale. Bueno, pues buenas tardes, señoras y señores. Good evening, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Xiuhtezcatl Martinez. I'm 16 years old. I'm a climate activist, a spokesperson for my generation, a representative of the youth voices all over the world that aren't necessarily in this room, but still need to be heard, still need to be represented. As was said very beautifully in my introduction, thank you, by the way, for saying my name correctly. It's not an easy one, but I've been on the front lines of this movement for the last 10 years of my life. And a part of what I've done everywhere that I go is say that I'm a representative of mi comunidad in Mexico, of my community in Mexico, the Mexica people. That's my ancestry, that is my lineage on my father's side. And for me, it means a lot to have a lot of my family here in the room. Mi tribu, mi gente Mexica aquí en este cuarto. It means a lot to have my family here in the room for the first time in a very long time that I've seen many of them. So I have a few things to say today, and I hope that they resonate. And this all begins with a 6-year-old kid who stood up onto a stage in his community to speak of an issue that he believed was more important than anything else. And when I was growing up, learning about my culture, about my heritage, about my traditions, my language, my dances, my songs, of my people, it gave me a perspective of the world that helped me understand that everything that we do today is in honor of our ancestors and of those generations that have not been born yet. The decisions that we make and the actions that we take will impact the world. That we have a responsibility as people, not activists, not politicians, but as people, to protect this planet for our generation and those to follow. And so when I was 6 years old, I stood up onto a stage and I delivered a message about climate change. I was telling the parents, you have to educate your kids different. We have to remind the parents of the world that we have to teach young people how to love the earth again. We have to remind each other of a connection to the planet, that we live on a living, breathing planet that we all depend on for life. And I saw that the greatest threat to our earth was climate change. That the climate crisis was going to be the most important issue of our time, and never before would there be a greater opportunity for people to come together to create change. So seeing this crisis through the eyes of a child, of a young person, is very different than looking at this problem from the perspective of a politician or of a businessman or a CEO of a company, where when I look at graphs and charts and statistics of the carbon dioxide of the atmosphere, I think of my siblings, of the children, of the young people in the world today that are going to be inheriting this crisis. Where today we have more carbon in the atmosphere than we ever have since human beings have been on this planet. Because of the way that we are living, because of our imbalance with one another, our imbalance with the planet. Learning about the destruction of our earth and the fact that my world is unraveling was terrifying. That was a very scary thing for me to learn at a very young age. And I guess what I began to understand is I would go to all of these environmental rallies, these environmental protests, and I began to learn that climate change isn't just an environmental issue. This issue was being divided and separated from the rest of the world because people believed that it was up to politicians and activists to deal with climate change. Where in reality, if you look at the impacts that climate change is having everywhere, we see that it's a human rights issue. People's lives are being lost because of climate change. We have millions of climate refugees all over the planet because of islands that are disappearing into the oceans because of storms and wildfires, droughts, changing weather patterns that are disrupting human systems. And they're going to make it impossible for us to survive on this planet if we wait any longer to take action. And you all know this. You all know the statistics. You guys know the facts. You know the fact that our world is collapsing in many ways. And for me, it's been personal because in Colorado, we experienced some of the worst wildfires, some of the worst floods ever just in the last couple years, where I have friends and family members that have lost homes, that have lost community members. And for me, climate change is very real. And as I travel more all over the world to share my voice with more people, I have a greater understanding that we are all connected, and that regardless of where we live, who we are, the God that we believe in, the color of our skin, we are all going to be affected by climate change at one point or another, if it hasn't happened already. And so this all has helped build an understanding that climate change is the most important issue of our time. And as a young person growing up in the world, I understand how easy it is to be disconnected, to feel hopeless, to feel apathetic about a crisis that is so big it seems daunting for one human being to ever be able to create change. My generation, you often find that young people don't care about anything, far less the environment, far less climate change. Because everything that we receive in the media is largely about the crisis, the problem, the suffering, the damage, whether it's climate change or war or nuclear warfare or Syrian refugees. We hear about the problem without being taught how to create solutions. And as human beings, we have been disconnected from these problems by failing to see the solutions that we must create. And if you look at the issue of climate change, many more people will see the solution as wind turbines and solar panels, as just a shift in our energy infrastructure. New laws in the end of the fossil fuel era, and yes, that is important. But I believe that more than anything, to create a change that will last forever, that will pass on a legacy that we are proud of handing to the future generations, we gotta change the way that human beings think. We are treating this beautiful planet as a resource, as a tool, as something that we can take from infinitely without even seeing the impacts and the destruction that is happening around us. As human beings, we have forgotten our connection to the earth, therefore we justify the destruction of it for greed and for more money in our pockets. And I think one of the most beautiful things of being a part of this movement for the last 10 years of my life, of traveling to communities, speaking to politicians, to elected officials, mayors, parliamentarians, presidents, world leaders, young people, activists, students, teachers, is that this movement is diverse and it is stronger when we come together. That every great change that has happened in the world, I see has come from people. Has come from people pressuring our politicians and our government to create change. Has come from revolutionaries standing at the front lines in their communities, mobilizing in their streets, fighting for justice, fighting for their voice to be heard in a world where people are no longer seen as leaders. So after Donald Trump got elected, man, I'm still dealing with that one. But after Trump got elected, people were like, well, what do you think? Is it over? I was like, it can't be, first of all. And second of all, I think that now that we have a leader in the United States government that does not believe in the existence of climate change, it is time now, more than it has ever been, for action to take place at a local level. Where we need change coming from our community leaders, from our mayors, from the youth in our community that have opinions, have voices, that care about these issues and need a place to be able to communicate them. Well, I've traveled everywhere. I've traveled to many places. Let me rephrase that. I've traveled to many places in the world. And I've seen that the greatest power lies within the vision, the voices, and the passion of young people. And so we come together in rooms and spaces like this with mayors from all over the world that each have a different story to tell, that each represent different people, different communities, different issues that they care about. We have power when we gather in a space like this, because if we begin to see changes in cities all over the world, then it's going to create global impact. And if we can connect the change that we see from our local politicians, and we connect that to the youth in our communities, that's going to create a greater movement than we've ever seen before. And in a lot of ways, I've lost hope in our politicians, in our congressmen, and in our presidents, because I've waited so long for change and nothing has happened. And the reason that I'm able to stand here today and not be hopeless is because when people ask me, what is it that you fight for? I think of the smile of my little siblings, of the children that I see on the streets, of the youth, and realize that this is their planet. These are their resources. This is their atmosphere. This is their problem that we're going to be leaving to them unless action is taken today. And it can be really challenging to think about where we are in the world today, but the way that I see it, there is no better time to be alive than now. And each and every one of us have a part to play in this movement, whether we represent the private sector, politics, or the legal system. Like, we all have a place and a part to play. Because this isn't about money, this isn't about politics, this isn't even about government, it's about change, it's about the survival of your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. That is what is at stake. So when you think about the way you live your life and the actions that you take, the things that you believe in and the things that you raise your voice or your fist to the sky to fight for, think about who we're doing that for. And the way that I see it is there's no nobler cause than to fight to protect the only home that we have for the young people that will inherit this planet. And it begins today with every person in this room, whether you're a mayor or not. Things like this need to continue to happen. We need to continue to gather, to mobilize this energy and realize that we have so much power in this room. And if we mobilize and we work together, we have more power in this room than any president will ever have. That if we work together with our community leaders, with the front lines fighters, with the activists, with our local politicians, we will have more power and more voices. We will create more justice and more change than any president ever will. So we stand here united. We stand here coming together as one people to create change, to leave behind a legacy. We are here building the legacy that we will be remembered by. And after we are dead and gone, all we will have is a legacy, is the footprints that we have left behind us. So I truly hope, I truly know that we will create, that these kind of things are going to be the first steps to create the change that the world is ready for. Thank you all so much for being here, for listening, for taking this time. And remember that the power to create change is in our hands. I'm a 16-year-old sophomore in high school, and I'm doing everything that I can to create change so no kid ever in the future has to fight the way that I have. So remember, the power is in our hands, in our voice, in the way that we live our lives, in the way that we vote. So united together, we will create the change that the world is ready to see. So let's take this conversation and create it into action, create change. Because never before has there ever been a greater time to be alive than now. Thank you.
So good. Thank you so much. This, everybody here, we are a little more safe about the future of the world with people like you. This was fantastic. Who are saying that the kids of our time don't engage and don't do anything? You are a perfect example of people taking responsibility. So thank you very much. Please stay on the stage. You will have roles in the next part of it. And he's also a hip-hopper. And I have this plan on having him throwing a rhyme sometime during this hour. So let's see if that's going to happen. Now we're going to turn the focus